Okay, so let's start with just grounding before we even begin. And I just again wanted to say thank you so much, Jane, for the time and opportunity to be here. So just feel free as you seem to be settling in to close your eyes, feel both feet firmly rooted on this beautiful earth. And I'm just gonna give an invocation and feel free to listen to these words and see how they resonate. And then I'll ask you at the end if there's anything you would like to provide as well for your own ability to ground. So, as we begin, we thank you for this blessed day, that we are so grateful to be alive and to be seeking the truth that reveals itself in the eyes of this beautiful beholder today, Jane Finette, as we come together to express love and service and compassion in action. We feel everyone has something special to share in this world, and we are so grateful for Jane to be with us today to share her story and the sparks that inspired her actions in creating ripple effects, actualizing love in this world. Let us be inspired by her story and light in us a lantern for a cause that matters deeply to us and to our world. Today, we value progress over perfection and know that we are guided and protected on this journey of service and love with our human family. And for the sake of our precious short lives, may we be leaders who care. May we be leaders who act mindfully for the greater good of generations to come. And may we listen intently without the need to fill space with sound and seek to understand rather than postulate how to interject. To our masters and teachers, our guides and guardians, please guide us to learn the lessons of living from our hearts and allowing the ripple effect of goodness, inspiration, hope, and courage to flow from our words into the positive actions that are supporting our families, communities, and this beautiful world we've been gifted to occupy. We could hear this call to express beauty in the world, and here we are. So thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
So take a deep breath. Is there anything else you would like to start off with, just to allow yourself to feel grounded and arrive here and now?
I think I'm good, actually. Thank you. That was so beautiful. I feel my heart is pretty full right now, actually. Yeah. What a beautiful thing to do. Thank you.
You're
It's
welcome.
really wonderful.
Welcome. Thank you. So thank you for being here. And now we'll kind of kick it off. Yeah. And you have
Yes,
the
ma'am.
little blueprint. We're just going to let this flow conversation. This is just two women that are looking to empower other women. So let's see how this goes. Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. Yes.
So wanted to welcome our next podcast guest, Jane Finette, to our Real Eyes, Realize podcast. And I am so excited to have this opportunity to speak with you and to provide to our listeners all of the good nuggets that you are working on in this world. So before we get started with the podcast, I'm going to just read a little bio and then we'll move forward into questions. Yeah.
Yes.
So Jane Finette is obsessed with accelerating change at scale through conscious leadership. It is her passion, expertise, and 2 decades of experience that are anchored at the intersection of technology and human potential. And at her core, she empowers individuals and communities to solve the world's most persistent and perennial problems. Jane is currently the executive director and founder of the Coaching Fellowship, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, which nurtures and brings together some of the world's most extraordinary emerging young women leaders in social change. Some of Jane's past work includes senior leadership roles at global brands such as eBay, Sotheby's, and Mozilla, reaching hundreds of millions of users through all stages of growth. She has founded and run large international teams, expanded organizations globally, built products, ran marketing departments, and grown large-scale open source communities. And Jane is also a successful serial entrepreneur and certified CPCC ACC executive coach and a leadership expert. And most recently, Jane is the author of a beautiful book called Unlocked: How Empowered Women Empower Women. And this is a referendum on women's inequality and a toolkit for leveling the playing field for women and girls. Part inspiration, part practical guide, Unlocked was written to encourage and empower women to take action into their own hands and to reach gender equality in our lifetime. So Jane, like, wow, first of all, big wow. How does it feel to have your bio be read back to you? What's the first
Yeah,
thing?
I'm like, who's that woman? She sounds really cool, doesn't she? And I'm like, I'm not that old really as well. I'm just like, how on earth did I manage to cram all that in? So,
This is interesting.
yeah, my mum would often say, she used to worry about me when I was younger because I would maybe change jobs every couple of years, and she'd, it was my dad was an engineer for nearly 30 years. Rolls-Royce did the same thing, and
Yes,
I think I used to terrify them both by doing lots of things. But yeah, it's made for a really rich life.
it
That's for
has. It
sure. Yeah,
seems
I've
like
learned a
that.
lot.
And what I love too is the ability for you to be looking at, and so much of this podcast is to amplify and to highlight people that are making ripple effects in the world, creating positive change. And what I love about you is you actually create a platform to do that for a multitude of women in all different parts of the world. And so I'm really excited to dig in. As we begin, I'd love to know a little bit more about Jane as she came into this world and your journey about some of these little things that you've done and big things. It's been a sort of journey. So, can you give us a Reader's Digest version of the path?
That I love that. I should definitely focus in on a Reader's Digest version. That's sometimes I feel like it's long and rambling. So I mean I haven't been talking very much, but you'll get this. I'm British. You'll hear that from my accent, though it does wander a little bit at times. So I was born in the middle of the UK, a very small village in Warwickshire, which is right in the centre of the UK, very close to Stratford, which a lot of us know from Shakespeare and so on. So very green, thatched cottages, lots of arable farming, and my mother's still there, and I love to go home. Very humble roots. Both my parents, grandparents, all worked in factories and grew up sort of like in a working class family. What I did have though was an uncle who. In the 60s, and it's interesting as we right now we're talking in the midst of the of Russia invading Ukraine,
Mhm.
and shocking sort of having to come to terms with a nuclear threat that we haven't had for 30 years. But my uncle was very motivated in the 60s for around the ban the bomb movement, and
Mhm.
got very involved with the trade union movement in local politics. Never finished school, never went to university, but ended up becoming a member of parliament in the UK, and which is quite rare for someone to end up in parliament without a degree and so on. And ended up being the longest serving MP in our area, 16 years. And so I think when I look back, so much of what he instilled in me around democracy and creating access and opportunity, I
Mm.
couldn't really see it, but I think was being forged for me at that time when I was a young girl, and I was just 16 when he first became an MP, and they didn't have children. I was his goddaughter, so I was always with them on the campaign, and I think it had a really
Uh,
made a deep impression on me. And I've been very fortunate, as you described, done a lot of different things. I was involved in I graduated during the first dot-com era,
yes.
and so, I mean, and you could be 23, and I had multi-million dollar pound budgets to launch jungle.com at that time. I was the launch manager. Just ridiculous things where you think, my God, how on earth would I have had those opportunities? So I've had a lot of luck, I
Yeah.
think as well. And I think what I've always done is also, if there's been an opportunity, I've always said yes.
Mm.
So I just saw where that would take me. So yeah, so a lot of startup experience, a lot of founding
Yes.
experience, and a lot of I would say trying to find my way. And when I
Mhm.
look at my resume, I think I've mentioned before, actually, when we were chatting offline, Christina, that I think I look like I'm six different people on my resume, because there is a lot of stuff on there. And I think until about 10 years ago, when I really dug into and looked at the women's empowerment work, I
Mm.
think I was really trying to find my way, really
Yeah.
trying to understand, what am I here to do in this lifetime? What am I good at? What am I motivated by? And what do I care deeply about?
Mhm.
And when I was always on target, when I was always on fire, doing my best work of my life was when my values were aligned
Mhm.
with the work that I was doing. So particularly at early days at eBay, when we were helping people sell online for the first time in the year 2000, you couldn't sell anything on the internet unless you had a merchant bank account.
Yeah.
So we were giving people the opportunity to start small businesses in their homes. Interestingly, a lot of women at
Yes.
home with children who were finding the power of eBay to sell. So creating empowerment there. And then later on at my particular really world and bringing in volunteers and getting my arms around distributed leadership and what that means to lead on the edges and be part of a movement. Like they
Mm.
were really informative stages of my life to be where I am today with the coaching
That's
fellowship.
incredible. I'm hearing a couple of things, both pivotal people who have been real mentors to you in your life, as well as, pivotal moments where you have taken a look at, how is this in alignment with my values? How am I giving back? And then early in career, we're just looking to say, like, who am I and how do I show up in
Mm,
this world, right?
yeah,
So tell us a little bit
definitely.
more when you think about your strengths, your background. What are some of those strengths and passions that have come through for you?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking. I mean, I really do think I just mentioned the distribution. I never, so when I think about a leader, innately, it was all about helping individuals around me become their best versions of themselves, do their best work,
Mm,
and um, and that just came very naturally to me. So that was something I was just sort of like what I thought you should be doing,
yeah,
and I don't think I ever held on to. One of the things that I say very often is I'm not a control freak, so I've never felt the need to be in control.
yeah,
I mean, of like work environment. And so, and I have learned through my work and the experiences I've had that if you really want to scale something and you really want to have impact, then you have to let go of control.
mm,
Things can only be so big if you control them. If you can find a way to allow others to take ownership and to take things and run with it, then wow, then the world's your oyster.
yeah,
So yeah, so these are great skills actually, but lack of control for sure. Not needing the no desire to be completely in control. Um, Helping people be the best they can be, for
yes.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but that wonderful lesson, right, about the more that we are able to let go, the more abundance we actually can create, because we're actually not limiting ourselves or limiting others with that creative process. And also just the ability to infuse, it sounds like, more creativity by being inclusive. And so you mentioned inclusivity and
Yeah.
accessibility has really been important to you. How has
Yes.
that fueled your work? Like, when did you first start getting into like this place of empowered women, empower other women? How did that begin?
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, I owe Mozilla so much, and they're the folks behind the Firefox web browser. So at one point, I was responsible for all of user engagement for Firefox. So that was about 500 million Firefox users in 90 different language versions. And I had a team of 6 people. So this will tell you how we did this work
Yeah.
together, which is in a decentralized way, working with volunteers on the ground in each country who were doing the work. And Mozilla is one of the largest consumer technology non-profits
Mm,
themselves. So it was at Mozilla where I first got access to coaching and leadership development.
uh,
So I had made it into the executive team, and then it was extraordinary because at that point, then suddenly you got access to all of this stuff, which I was turning around saying to myself, wow, gosh, I wish I'd had that 25 years ago. Like, goodness me. So when I mentioned about sort of being able to take a good hard look at my values and what am I here to do really? And am I congruent? Am I
mm,
aligned with what I'm good at and what I want to do and what a legacy might be, and so on. And a lot of it was, and actually I've done quite a lot of work looking back at Mozilla now, and sometimes I have a few regrets of leaving Mozilla, but I couldn't do anything but think about becoming a coach. So I left, and I got trained as a coach with Coaches Training Institute, and I wanted to give back. And I specifically wanted to help young women leaders because I realized this was something I would have never had access to. And it was particularly for me important to help young women in social change, because we know today, if you work at Facebook or Google and you're 25, you're perhaps in your first or second position in your career, you're not going to get access to leadership development and executive coaching. It just doesn't happen. So if you get on the path, of an emerging leader, and then suddenly you're a VP or something, then maybe. But most of the time, our male leaders get access to this, and you certainly have to be older or on the right track. So I ended up. It was a happy accident, Christina, actually, in creating the coaching fellowship, because I wanted to give back and help these young women leaders in social change. Started off with just 2 or 3 pro bono places, which kind of exploded. I wasn't ready for that. And I ended up with about 40 plus women who wanted to have coaching from me, who were all amazing. I came from 12 countries, boots on the ground in East Africa or in Latin America and so on. And so I went back to the men and women I coached with at CTI and said, hey, are you looking for a pro bono client? Because I have a whole bunch of amazing young women. And to their credit, 16 of them said yes. And you can do the math. We gave everyone a place. It was not a competition. And we got started. But then what happened over the course of another 6-9 months was that more women kept coming to me asking when I was going to run another program, because 40 women looked like a program, and there was so little access to coaching for this demographic that they were talking about it. And likewise on the other side, to do pro bono coaching, it would be amazing if you could find a social impact entrepreneur out of Rwanda to be in support of, but how do you find that person? So what I hadn't realized was that I was creating this community without realizing it. And I was maniacally focused because I quit my big job at Mozilla. So I was like, oh, well, I'm building a coaching business and I don't have time for that. That's not what I'm doing. And then eventually the noise level got so big that I said, I'll run one program. And we had 50 coaching places at that point, and we had nearly sort of 700-800 applications. So it was interesting, but I had to surrender to it. So I wish I could tell you I had this marvelous vision, but it was sort of like the universe, as she in her infinite wisdom often does, presents you with opportunities, and sometimes we can't hear it, or we don't want to hear it, right? But I was shown just of the need for the kind of work that we do today with these young women leaders. And that was 8 years ago. It's crazy how the time has flown.
It is. And, I mentioned to you a little bit, as I was emailing you in preparation for this call, I have your book, the recent book, Unlocked, How Empowered Women Empower Women. And it is like dog-eared, and I have tabs on like every other page, because it is such a beautiful, beautiful collection of powerful, positive stories, as well as wonderful data and insights about where things are. And one of the things that really impacted me, and I'm curious about your thought on this, is here we are, March of 2022. It's International Women's Month. And so what a wonderful privilege to speak with you this month. And at the same time, we're still moving on the heels of COVID. As you mentioned, we've got Russia invading Ukraine. I've read in your book, and certainly have the feeling of the patriarchal systems, they just don't work. They don't work anymore. I'm curious what your thought is on that as you kind of bubble everything up, and even the impact on gender equality relative to COVID.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, what a massive question,
I
actually,
know
Christina.
that's a
And it's
lot.
no,
Take it
no,
one little
it's
step at
but
a
it's
time.
no. I thank you. I mean, and I really thank you for asking me. And actually, if I think back of writing the book and why I wrote the book, and then which was because it was the start of COVID and the numbers of women's equity was going completely in the wrong direction. I mean, we had made such little gains as it
Mm,
was. If you looked at the number of women in positions of leadership in VP positions, CEO positions. I mean, these numbers were completely being obliterated with
mm,
hundreds upon thousands of women having to leave the workforce. And because women will earn less than men, it was men didn't want their women, their wives and their partners to drop out of the workforce, but it
mm.
just made sense if they were the primary, earning more money than the woman, because we know there's a gender difference in the amount of
Yeah.
money, 81 cent on the dollar. It was clear that the female in the relationship was going to stay home and homeschool and
Mm,
take on all those responsibilities. But the other numbers which were shocking for me were around 32 million girls didn't go to school today,
mm,
not because they didn't want to, but because they're not deemed important enough. There aren't sanitary equipment for them, so much stigma around girls' education. And the
mhm.
Malala Fund came out at that same time in the sort of early summer of 2020 and said another 12 million girls will not go back to school because of the pandemic. And I was so
Mm,
just depressed and distraught and thinking, my God, like I feel like this and I run a women's organization. How on earth are we going to claw back these gains
mhm.
that have been lost? And how do we not only do that, but leapfrog forward?
Yeah.
And you mentioned the sort of the patriarchal systems. And I mean, all that time while I was writing the book, I was really banging my drum about gender equity. And alas, seeing so many things in the world, as you were just describing, I feel like I've moved beyond that,
Mm,
and I mean, kind of unashamedly so. Which is, I actually don't believe in gender equity anymore. We need to transcend that. We need to equal. I've said this to you, but equal to what? Do we want to be equal to systems that don't work for
mm,
everyone? Systems that are breaking the earth and the survival of every living thing? It's just we have to find a way moves way beyond all of this. And women's leadership, the way that we lead, the way that we can bring different perspectives and different skills to the conversation, is critical. And I don't want to blame men. This is not a sort of like
mm.
male bashing thing,
Of course.
because these are just systems which it happened to be this way. They've evolved that way. Every fabric of society
Yeah.
has male leadership at its center, and men are tired too.
Yeah.
This is I think it's very complicated for men to be in positions of leadership today as well, and exhausting.
Mm,
So we're reaching breaking points in many, many different pieces. And I just, with the pandemic, for example, we've shown a light very deeply on
mhm,
women's contribution. And I sincerely hope that as we do start to build back better, as they say,
mm.
that means that women are at the center of those decisions.
Yeah.
We've got a long way to go.
There is a long way to go. And I think what I also love about just talking with you is there's a long way, and yet it starts with one small step from individuals. Like it doesn't have to feel like that we're boiling the ocean, but it does have to start. And it feels like everything from, looking at gender equity to how we treat Mother Earth and all of these things are compounding and getting to a point where when are we all going to wake up and start realizing that our actions do matter? And I love what you utilize is this thought about virtuous cycles and the flywheel. Would you care to explain that a little bit more? I think that's a
Yes.
beautiful analogy.
Thank you. Yes, I picked up on it because I'm doing the research, and thank you for bringing us all the way back around as well. Because one of the things I'd wanted to say when I was starting to write that book was, I thought, oh my God, at one point I thought, God, this is going to be a 10-volume book because
Of
there are
course.
so many things that we're fighting for access to opportunity, to money, to our bodies, to rights. I mean, it's just on and on and on.
So
So,
many.
and yet, as you say, we're coming right back to what can each of us
Yeah.
do in that moment, um, and um, and I've just gotten, forgive me, the little bird just flew away. Christina, this is live, real time.
It's
Can you
love.
ask me the question again? I'm so
No,
sorry.
this thought about virtuous cycles and the
Virtuous
flywheel.
cycles. Thank
I
you.
love
I'm so
that.
sorry. Forgive me.
Oh,
Um,
good.
so in doing the research for the book, I realized there was this fantastic piece of research which I kind of heard about, but I hadn't really studied, which was that women in the developing world will give back up to 90%, 90%
Amazing.
of what they earn, what they learn, what they've grown.
Mm,
So we're not just talking about money, but we're talking about knowledge. We're talking about um, sharing all of the resources.
mhm,
And for men in the developing world, and it's obviously a much more complex picture, but isn't really about 30 to 40%.
mm,
So for me, and when I have witnessed women in my own life, in my own circles, is that we care deeply about paying it forward to our
mm,
nearest and dearest, and bringing them into a circle. So for me, it's something that we do naturally already.
mhm,
Um, but what happens if we do more of it? What happens if
mm,
we bring more women into our circles? And can we get the flywheel therefore turning faster?
mhm,
Because we know that when more women sit at the negotiation table, there'll be longer lasting peace. When women have
mhm,
access to agricultural tools and land, they'll provide more food. They say that giving women access to land would mean that more than 5 million people will not go hungry because of
mm,
how we till and share the land. Um, uh, Infant mortality rates go down, literacy
yeah,
rates go up. Something like $25 trillion would get added to the global economy if women were empowered. And
I
the
love that.
Rainforest Alliance says we could even solve climate crisis if we could just empower more
Yes.
women. So there's no silver bullet, but it does seem to me that empowering women and girls, because of this virtuous circle, because if you empower one woman, you are not just empowering that one
Mhm,
woman, you are empowering many other women, and therefore many other humans,
yes.
and every living thing on this beautiful planet. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It
So,
reminds me, and I love too, that, in your book, there's many different quotes, and it just reminds me of the one from Melinda Gates around if you invest in a girl, she becomes a woman and she invests in everyone else. And to me,
yeah.
that's really what you're talking about is this desire to, yes, receive education, yes, receive resources. There's this element of for the greater good that happens when you take a look at that, and everybody benefits from that.
Yes, yes, sincerely, yes. The Rebecca Solnit says, feminism isn't a campaign to destroy men, but one to liberate us all. And
Yes.
that is, and I know I really want to instill that it's not only women. It is just but it's different when we are working together, when there are more voices, more perspectives, more
Yeah.
diversity, and yeah, we're sadly missing that.
Mm.
Yeah.
So when you take a look at, and I know that you have had so many different interviews, you have come front and center with so many different individuals and their stories. I'm curious if there's something that comes to mind that has been inspiring for you around their own journey, and where
Mm.
things like coaching or funding have really facilitated a lot of return on investment for village or for a community at large. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, with the first story, it's one that profoundly impacted me when I was writing the book was, and I tell her story in the book about Fareshta Faro, who is she's a Afghan girl who started the first coding school for girls in
Mm,
Herat in Afghanistan. She grew up a refugee in Iran from the first wave of the Taliban, and then when the Taliban left, the family moved back. She was one of six children,
mm,
and I mean, I cried just on the entire interview was me weeping for a woman who was less than, I'm 35 years old, I think she
Mm,
was, and the wisdom that she held in her bones from the things that she'd witnessed and seen. And her mother cared so deeply about her education that she learned to become a seamstress, and all
mm,
of the additional money she had for the family went so Fareshta could go to school, finish her school. And
yes.
then she decided she was very enamored by computer science, was the only woman in computer science, and eventually went to study in Berlin and became a professor teaching there,
Mm,
and wanted to bring it back to Iran, to Afghanistan.
yes.
And then sadly, she herself started to receive threats on her life.
Mm,
She had to leave and was running the school remotely. Her father had passed away. She didn't get to go back. So she's been in New York running the organization
mm,
for the last, it must be maybe 8 years now. She hasn't been back.
mm,
And there was so much hope, though, in the story. She would tell me these stories about the young women who she was enabling, who were then, maybe 17 years old,
yeah.
earning triple what the male in the household was earning on a weekly basis, 3 times as much. They were building websites and
Mm,
apps and things like this. And then, just one of the most joyful things that I discovered. And to bring the story sadly down for a moment,
yeah.
last August, I was visiting my mum in the UK, first time in 2 years, to witness the US UK pull out of troops in Afghanistan and the fall
Mhm,
of Afghanistan, and reaching out to her and trying to understand what did that mean for her. And
mhm,
sadly, the school closed. She was very worried for the young girls who'd had access,
mm,
and yet I'm still in contact, and I see her posts, and they're trying to find the way forward again.
mm,
She always says, where there's ruin, there's hope. That
yeah.
there's treasure in that. When you've got nothing, what
Yeah.
else will you do? But
You
build.
build from
And
there. Hmm.
absolutely. So it's such a telling story, I think, of resilience. And she also would say, you how to plant seeds on a rock, and that nature is so incredible, and humanity is so incredible that even plants will grow on a rock,
Yeah,
and
it's
so
true.
we should take courage in that, and take faith
Hmm.
in that,
Hmm.
as bad as things are, there's always hope. There's always
Yes.
something that we
Yeah.
can do.
It's kind of
Yeah,
like the Leonard Cohen song too, it's like you have a little crevice, right? A little bit of
yeah,
light. And
that's
that
where the
is
light
it,
shines.
even through the darkness and the areas that you think that there's no possible way. There are some amazing individuals and resilience and people that are looking to bring the light forward. Um, but what an impactful individual, and the strength and
It's amazing.
courage that
Mhm.
it takes for somebody to push against systems that have been in place, or the role of what a girl should be doing in communities. I just think
It's
that those are some things that it takes people that are willing to put their life on the line. I think
mhm.
you also were mentioning Tracy Chow, and some of
Oh,
the work that she's
yes,
been
the
done. Would you like to
diversity activist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tracy Cho, she was one of our coaching fellows in 2015, I think it was now, 2014, 2015. And so she's a computer science engineer, went to
Yeah.
Stanford. Wicked smart lady. We're just incredibly smart. And I sort of won't go into it all, but received so much
Hmm.
abuse as a young woman in tech, and with not only gender bias, but also unwanted sort of sexual abuse and advances,
Hmm.
and I love her story because it's back to our ripple effects,
Mm.
because she ended up quitting a sort of a toxic job, went to Pinterest, the pin board
Yes.
company, loved working there, was wildly successful. I mean, they speak so highly of Pinterest and their culture. So real credit to them. And then she went to She went to the Anita Borg Institute, sort of like it's an annual conference for women in tech. Huge,
Hmm.
10,000 women in science, computer science go there. It's an extraordinary event. And she got the chance to go. And she heard Sheryl Sandberg,
Hmm.
COO of Facebook, um, lamenting the number of women in positions of power and influence. Well, the number of women in tech, number one,
Hmm.
but then also the number of women in leadership in tech. And she was just going on and on. And Tracy was thinking to herself, well, but where are the numbers?
Yeah.
Like,
Where's the
I don't
data?
understand. Yeah, we don't. I mean, it's, of course, you have to sort of laugh because it's sort of like a typical, you might imagine, left brain sort of question of like, oh, where's the data? So she took it upon herself. She wrote a very small blog post.
Mm.
She got permission from Pinterest to share what were the numbers for Pinterest in the number
Yeah.
of women in tech. And she encouraged anything to all post. And she set up something on GitHub, which is like a code repository. And it really spoke to the tech community because they
Mm.
love data and they realized there was no data. So it started with just a few handful of organizations posting their data. And
Yes.
then within 3 or 4 weeks, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google,
Yeah.
Twitter, all of the big ones were absolutely forced to share that
Yeah.
not only the number of women, but also the people of color in these positions as
Hmm.
well. And where we stand today is that these tech companies will release annual reports on their
Hmm.
diversity data. They're being as transparent as they possibly can. And there is a lot of work to do there as
Yeah.
well, and a lot of lip service, I think. But still, and that was
Yeah.
a single blog post from Tracy.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
she was like and talking, just doing it. It was the right time, right message. But she still did it, and that's the thing where we say about those small actions.
Yes.
Sometimes I think we can feel disenfranchised. Like, will it make a difference? Doesn't matter.
Mm.
Who knows? But if
That's
we
right.
don't do it, we will never know.
That's right. And the catalyst for change can start with one small spark. And that's,
Yes.
yeah, it's just
And it's something
incredible.
we can all do then.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be such a grand thing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
true. And what I'm curious about too, Jane, is, when you think about where things are, what do you see as your hopes and dreams? What is the potential for the future from your perspective?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I am definitely a glass three-quarter full person.
Okay.
So I have a lot of hopes and um, a lot of positivity. I mentioned those statistics already when women are empowered, like how the world changes. And
Yes.
so for me, the most important thing we can do is continue to keep empowering women forward because when we're in positions of authority and decision making, then and also with money. Actually, this was something I wanted to bring in.
Yeah.
So money is critical to this equation. I hate myself for saying it because I wish that the world operated on more than money.
Hmm.
But today, it's still the system which works for the vast majority of us. The trouble, though, with capitalism and with money is that whoever owns the most of it, that's important. And
Yeah.
what are the problems that we're solving? And so when women don't have as much money, then we are not getting our voices included in the conversation about what do we spend money on and for what purpose, to what end. Um, and it's exciting because women are going to, in America, by 2030, another $30 trillion. Sorry, gosh, I wish it was trillion. $30 billion will flow into the hands of women. This is
Yeah.
the baby boomer generation turning over, and that money flowing into the hands of women. So I'm very excited when we see that much more disposable income in the
Hmm.
pockets of women. And then what will we do? Like,
Yes.
will capitalism change? Will we invest differently? Are we going to invest in education and environment? Um, when we look at the media, when more women have a say, like, does the
Hmm.
conversation change? Are we
Yes.
care, what kind of stories get featured? So we have massive potential to change the story that's being told out there, and
Mhm.
but it starts with empowering that one other woman in your life. Believe
Mhm.
me.
It
Yeah.
really, it that does, and that is the beginning. And I think about that too, is, are the stories changing, and we see individuals like
Mm.
Reese Witherspoon and others that are looking at,
Yeah.
and the Me Too movement and how much has shifted and changed. And it's taken some very brave people to be able to say it doesn't have to be this way, and we're going to be part of that change.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the potential of it for the little girls growing up today, I think that there's a lot of great opportunity, which is good, and
It's
a lot of work
I
still to do, right?
yes, no, it's true, and I think we have to take heart that, not to get uh saddened or it's not happening fast enough. We're talking about fundamentally shifting every system that we have ever known in modern times, or
Yeah,
even not modern times, medieval times. But we know that women have not been part of that decision. So we're changing everything. So any wonder it's taking this long. It's okay,
that's
but
right.
it's happening. It is
Yes.
happening. And
It is happening.
yeah.
So the other part that I wanted to make sure that we tapped into is, many times, as I mentioned to you, we offer resource guides to our listeners, and we put that on our realeyes.love website. And the thing that I think is really, really beautiful are the practical tools that you offer in your book, which are your 10 keys for looking at empowering women. And so I would love to see if that's okay if we put that out on the resource guide. And if you want to just talk a little bit about these 10 keys and how you came to these as some things that everybody can do to support another
Yeah.
sister, another woman in this move.
Thank you. Well, and of course I would love to. I mean, it doesn't work if people don't know about it.
Yes.
So I give it away, make it as
Thank you.
available as possible. No, please, please, thank you. And um, well, I better grab a copy actually because I don't know them off by heart. So I should do, shouldn't I?
Oh, no
And
shoulds in this.
maybe I'll pull out a few actually. There's a quite a few to get through. And
Yeah,
we
we don't
can
have to
read
go through all 10,
everyone.
but yeah, a couple that would be
Yeah.
really fun to
Well, the
pop
first
to.
one, and this one, I love to share. It's one of my favorites, actually. Key number one is just say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, just say yes, because you know how hard it is for a woman to ask for help.
Oh, so
So
hard.
we're rubbish at it, aren't we? So if some person, some woman has come to you and asked for help, please help her because she will
Mhm.
have gone through seven shades of hell to get to the point where she could actually feel safe in her skin to ask for you
Yes.
for an introduction or some advice or an hour of your time or something. So and
Mhm.
that's something we can all just easily do. In addition, this bit's important because people would say to me a lot, we're doing so much already as women, like you want me to say yes, like where on earth do you think I'm going to get the time for that from? And I totally get it. And so what I would say is, it's also okay to say no, but
Yes.
please say no. At least say no, because very often we'll ask for help and then there's nothing.
Yeah, the
It's
crickets.
just a flat line, and that will dissuade someone from asking again. So if you
Mhm.
say no, I'm so sorry, I'm so busy this time, but good luck. Someone's going to ask somebody else.
Yeah.
It's so.
Or make another connection or something.
Yes, if you
It's the be
absolutely.
clear, be conscious, be kind, and part of that is closure. Yeah, so true.
Yeah, that's so lovely. It is. Um, Number two, tell her she's ready. You know, um, we hold ourselves back all the time,
Mm,
and sometimes we just need a kind, gentle sister to pull us along and tell us, to you're fine, you're ready to take that big job, or you're
that's
ready to take
right.
on that project, and
Yeah.
um,
Kind of
you're
like the mother
ready.
bird that kicks the fledgling out of the
Yeah,
nest. Like,
it's
you're
a bit of
ready. And
tough love, but
yeah.
and I shared in the book too, the evidence is that when we do take these leaps, we are actually way more successful than
Mm,
we realize, particularly when we look to promote, when it is about taking a new job and promotions. Um, we interview really well, if we'd only just be willing to, put
yeah.
ourselves forward.
Mm,
Um, Stand behind her. This one is, um, it's something we do a lot for our sisters everywhere. Um, sometimes it's really hard to do that in the workplace. So a lot
Mm,
of these for me are the things we do naturally as women for other women. But when
yes.
you suddenly put us in the work environment, something gets really weird and funky, and we're
Hmm.
not too sure how we're
Hmm.
supposed to be, and professionalism and
Yeah.
strangeness. So,
I find that's
uh,
interesting on that note. So many women that I've spoken with, and, I come from a tech background and Silicon
yes,
Valley, is that, in the past, it felt like a woman had to become more like a man to be successful,
yeah.
that there was a change, and that competitive arena as women often had a harder time supporting other women. I think there's a bit of a shift changing now, but there may be some of that still pervasive. I'm curious if you found the same thing in your interviews and your own experience.
You know, I haven't. It's so interesting, and I'm delighted because people would want to talk about it, but could give me no evidence.
Ah.
And I have actually since then though done sort of presentations and conversations and things, and I do hear more of it, but I don't hear it as loudly as I thought I might. And
Yeah.
everybody wanted to tell me the Madeleine Albright quote, which is, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women," and and yet I couldn't tell you
Yeah.
anybody who really just maybe two, three stories
Hmm.
where a woman had gone out of her way to kind of
Hmm.
destroy someone or make it much more difficult for them. It was much more women didn't feel empowered to help. So it
Mm,
wasn't actively being nasty or something, but rather they just thought, that what difference can I make? Or
yeah,
and
that's
that's very
beautiful.
sad.
Thank you for setting the record straight on that from your perspective. I
Well,
think
I'm
that's
sure
so
it
true.
happens. Sadly, I'm sure it is. But what we are seeing, of course, is more women, women as different examples of how to lead and how
Yes.
to be. And so I think some of that is going away. To be the only in the room is
Hmm.
hard. I share the story about Mitchell Baker, the co-founder of Mozilla, in the book. And forever, she was the only really
Hmm.
woman CEO in technology.
Yeah.
And how that will shape you when you don't have anyone else to connect with or find belonging with. Yeah,
Yes.
it's understandable, but tough.
Yeah.
Um, help herself. Those coaches, you'll love this one, which is, we're not broken and we don't need fixing. Sometimes we just need a sister to be on our side and hold our feet to the
Yes.
fire and do all those things, because we know it. We just need a little bit of a help to find our
Hmm.
path.
Hmm.
um
A little bit
uh
of boost. That turbo boost is really helpful, right?
yeah, yeah, no, and to be I was mentioning this in a call just this morning, but to be truly seen
Hmm.
and witnessed and listened to, um
Powerful.
wow, it's rare, isn't it rare?
Hmm.
And so, wow, like this doesn't require special skills. It just requires you be with someone, and
Yeah.
what it is to be seen and to be witnessed. Like, wow, like you want really want to help someone, yeah, truly listen to someone for half an hour. You go,
Hmm.
gosh, change their
Yeah.
life. Um, I mentioned this before. Key number 5 is actually talk about money, like actually talk about money, because it's so awkward. Not for everyone. I know. I love those women who love talking about money. I wish that was me. I'm still working on it. Um, but there's a lot of guilt and shame around money. A lot of the
Hmm.
way that we were brought up to it's very rude to talk about money. Uh, it's girls should save it. You should be careful with it.
Hmm.
And yet boys are still taught money is a vehicle. If you have
Hmm.
some, let's grow it. Let's make it work for you.
Hmm.
And so this piece for all women, but particularly as well for young women, I think is
Yes.
really important to get them very comfortable talking about
Yeah.
money, because then they're going to ask for what they're worth. They're going to learn to invest it and make that money work for them. And when you read statistics, like 2/3 of women over the age of 65 in America have the potential to retire into poverty,
Mm.
is unacceptable. But
No,
because
totally.
we earn less, that compounds over time. And if we're only putting it in a savings account, which basically makes zero interest, we just don't have the liquidity those means.
Hmm.
So it's important. Stand up for her, number 6, is probably the most difficult. because that is about taking a stand, right? And
Mhm.
that means you're putting yourself on the line.
Yes.
So in the workplace, standing up for her in a meeting,
Yes.
even if it's, I'm so sorry, but she's being talked over, or so she just said that and someone else took the credit for it,
Mhm.
you might think that's relatively small, but there's uh, potential consequences
Yes.
of taking these stands, and then it goes all the way up from there, of course, from um, uh, describing any witnessing of misbehavior,
Mhm.
or calling things out on social media and getting doxxed or something. I mean, but there
Yes.
comes a time, I think, for all of us where we just can't take it anymore, and you will be
Absolutely.
called forth to stand up
Yeah.
for her.
And that's a big
Um,
part of active allyship and really what that really means in action. Yeah.
that is so true. I love that term, the being an active ally. It's
Mm.
yeah, like I mean, and if we don't take action, then
Right.
yeah, we're letting it
Yeah.
happen.
That's right.
Um, okay, I'm winding these up quickly, Christina, I promise. Um, be the example. We know this. We know that we should be role models, and
Mhm.
it's important. My take on this here is to be real as
Mm.
women. We just can't have it all. We just
Mhm.
can't. It's a myth, and we know that. I love to share my story. When you asked me, thank you for letting me share my story about. I have a working class background. I was the first kid in my family to go to college.
Mhm.
I worked in a factory for 3 years myself before I went to
Yes.
college. I have no shame about that. It built me. I am
Yeah.
who I am because of that opportunity. But I think when people are like, oh, she did this big job at Mozilla and she wrote a book and she runs this nonprofit helping social change makers. Oh, it sounds so glorious. And it's like, well, no, actually, I wandered around in the desert for quite a
Mhm.
few years trying to find my path, and I had some big fancy jobs, but not sure they all spoke to me, and I'm not
Mhm.
sure they were all I did it for all the right reasons.
Mhm.
And they're the stories I want to hear, because it's not linear and it's
Yes.
messy, and it's
Yes.
so please tell someone your story because it's fascinating.
Absolutely.
um, and then give her confidence. Number 8. This is one of the things that you were asking me about. What breaks your heart and
Mhm.
what warms your heart. And this to me is a really big one, because when I first started the coaching fellowship and we were looking for applicants from young women social change leaders from all over the world, and we'd
Mhm.
say to them, what do you want coaching on? Like, what would be different if you got what you wanted from this program and this
Great
opportunity?
question. Mhm.
And they would say confidence.
Wow.
Like 90+% would say, I need to work on confidence.
Mhm.
Just killed me. It was, and they were doing some of the most extraordinary things. In the beginning, we used to vet them based on the scope and scale of impact, so that they
Mhm.
would be touching at least 100,000 lives in terms of making their lives better, saving their life. These
Yes.
are women doing this level of work, yet they wanted to work on confidence.
Yes.
Um,
And you think, oh my. And yet at the same time, we see it such an interesting thing societally, right?
Absolutely. And yet I know that I don't need to be Bill Gates. I don't,
Mhm.
I don't need to have $1 million in my pocket to give you. If
Mhm.
that's all you need,
Yes.
we can work on that,
That's
So
right.
that's the thing that warms my heart. It's like, wow, like this is it. This is the key that turns everything. So
Wow.
honestly, I think it's huge.
It's beautiful.
Send the elevator down. Number 9. This one is again back to young women. So Lean In and McKinsey for the last 6 years have done a women in the workplace study, and
Mm.
there they look at all the numbers. How many women VPs are there, how many CEOs, and women on boards, and so on and so forth. It's important. It's a great read. The one number, this blew my mind. The one number that hasn't shifted in 6 years, no difference,
Mm.
is the number of first time women managers. So for every 100 young men that get a chance to be a manager, and that doesn't necessarily mean managing people, but managing a project, managing something,
Yes.
um, there will be 85 white women who get that opportunity, and then 71 Latina and 58 Black women.
Mm.
So when we look at over time, where
Yes.
do we land with that? And people say, oh, there's a pipeline issue, and I hate that. But it's kind of true. So if they
Hmm.
don't get that first start, they just will never catch up. They will
Hmm.
never be able to. And when we look at our women of color, 58 out of 100, 50 and sorry, 58 Black women out of 100 white men getting their
Hmm.
first managerial role. So,
It's real
so
disparity.
that was where I would I would point people, if you're in a company and you have some potential to be in support of the young women in your organization, it's important to get women in the executive suite, but
Hmm.
also to be looking right at the beginning of
Hmm.
these women starting their careers.
Hmm.
And the last one, number 10, is be a sister. It's be a sister. We're and particularly again back to the workplace, like we are awesome as taking
Yeah.
care of each other and being in community and loving each other.
Yes.
And then we get in the workplace and it's so complicated. And yet this is where we need support. We know that women are 2.5 times more likely to be successful if they have a strong group of women around them in the
Hmm.
workplace.
And then network is
Um,
so important.
it
Mhm.
is so yeah, be a sister and all that means. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, Jane, thank you, sister, for being
Yes,
part
thank
of, I
you.
tell you, just, well, part of this world and the ripple effect that you continue to promote. I'm curious, like, as we look at wrapping this up, how can our listeners support you? Like, what are the things that are going on, and how do we continue to propagate and amplify the beautiful work you're doing in the world?
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I mean, my work is the Coaching Fellowship. So that's our nonprofit that helps young women social change leaders get access to leadership development. I mean, our belief is that the younger they are when they get access to their full leadership
Yes.
capacity and capabilities, then the more they will go and into the world and create the impact that we desperately need.
Mhm.
So supporting the coaching fellowship is a big piece. So whether that might be as a supporter, as a financial supporter, that would be incredible. But also for any coaches that might be listening as well, we're always looking for volunteer coaches to be in
Mhm.
support of our programs, which are always growing. So those two big things would be great. And then lastly, just my book. If people are interested, that would be great. And all of the proceeds of the book goes to the Coaching Fellowship
Mm.
as well too. That is that virtual circle that we try and live and breathe ourselves. So
Yes,
in
that
order to
is
give back to.
amazing. Well, already I've have a few copies, and I've gifted those to girlfriends. And I will just say that on behalf of my experience, it was an amazing read, a quick read. I found myself poring over the pages and looking not only at the information and the data, sometimes in shock, but also at the strategies and the practical tips. And so, just a wonderful job on that. And I just really wanted to say, just what a pleasure it is to know you. Oftentimes, how we end these podcasts is just a quick series of collective questions. We
Oh,
ask these of all of our guests, kind of off the hip, very spontaneous responses. So if you're willing to stick with me for a couple more
of
minutes,
course.
let's
I'd
go
love
there.
that. Thank
Okay,
you. Yes.
awesome. And I do want to let our listeners know that all of in our show notes, we'll have links to the book, and we'll have links to the coaching fellowship. So you'll be easy to find relative to all of our channels. So thank you. So first of all, what are you currently reading or watching? What's on your nightstand, or what's
Oh
on your
my gosh.
Netflix move?
I gosh, I actually have my Kindle here
Oh,
and I just started. Actually, I've become, I used to read a lot and then I wrote a book and then I didn't read anything. I was too
funny
involved.
how
I was
that
like, oh my
happens.
God, I have no time for other books. And so I set myself a goal this year to read 50 books and I have read 22.
Good for you.
And it is the 1st of March. And I have just picked up, my husband just rolls his eyes at me. I'm reading Shadow State, Murder, Mayhem, and Russia's, I can't see it here now, but anyway, it's about Russia and
Ah,
their crazy
yeah.
leader and so
Yeah.
on. So that's, yeah.
One of the first steps is to get educated, right? So it sounds like that's part of your
Yeah,
equation, is how do I find out more? And
yeah,
so in order to kind of fuel how we move forward in a positive
yes.
way. Awesome. So here's a question. If you could eat dinner and engage in dialogue with anyone, past or present, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. Um, hmm. I wish I had something more profound to say, but I really miss my grandmother, and
Mhm.
um, she passed when I was really pretty young, and I would love to have an opportunity to um, have her wisdom in my life again and share what I've been able to achieve. Um,
Mm,
it's
thank
very
you.
important lady for me. Yeah.
I hit a tuning fork for me as well, as we just said goodbye to my grandmother of
Oh,
97 years
oh, God
just a few
bless her.
weeks ago.
Oh,
And
honey.
I just think, we come on the coattails of so many amazing, amazing women, and the wisdom, like you mentioned. Um, how lucky are we to come from some beautiful stock? Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. And our older, wise women in our lives are so often overlooked, and
Mhm.
yeah, I get very passionate about our wise women in
Yes.
the
Yes.
world as well. Yeah.
I agree. So when you find yourself challenged by, something in your life, world events, or something small like stubbing your toe, what do you do to remind yourself how you choose to show up?
Oh, this is such a great question. Hmm, um, yeah, it's a struggle actually. It's
Mm,
what's coming to me is still a struggle. I definitely, I mean, my values have evolved as well, and I'm just doing some Brené Brown work actually on
mm,
the which is one of the um, values work again. And for me, one of them is nature, and how that lives out for me is the interconnectedness of everything.
mhm,
So for me, it's just not always about humans; it is about the whole thing, and that really grounds me. The stone toe part, I'm not quite probably square and help. Generally, everything else that requires to work through some struggles. Then a lot of being outside in nature, and then also coming back in the connectedness of everything is
mhm.
helps me find hope and helps me move forward.
That's beautiful. And our closing question is simply, what are you most grateful for today?
Oh, well, I'm so grateful to you. Oh
Mm.
my goodness, this has been such a beautiful conversation, and uh, actually a real range of emotions for me as well on the call. Everything from I feel like I've lived a whole season now, with being very excited and wildly passionate and angry and full
Yeah.
of love and um, introspective and great now
Mm.
too.
Well, thank you. I am so deeply grateful for this opportunity to get to know you more, to reveal more of how you look at the world and some opportunities for us, and also to support you in all of this beautiful ripple effects that you are making. So, thank you, Jane, for your time, for your energy, for your work, and just for being who you are. And best of luck as you move off you're going on a business trip to Dubai, I know. So safe travels to you. And thank you for your time.